Welcome. This is Sienna Lea of 0 Point Consortium, Rise Multiversity, and Shadow Synthesis. I'm here at the gracious invitation with one of my students, Kajal. Alfred Lambramont Weber has invited us on as we are bringing a new educational platform in collaboration with his Omniversity. And I just want to appreciate him and send him lots of love and gratitude because he's bringing some really wonderful women on to share. And the information that we're bringing is key at the nexus point of this new step as we embody Ascension. And I know there's a lot of talk about ascension. Oh, it's all false light, or there's no ascension, it's only inscension. And I'm not afraid of the ascension word. I think that we need to be very clear, though, about what we're talking about and what it is. And as some of you who do know me, I've been engaged in the evolution of shadow work. I've studied with female avatars. So this is a female wisdom path of integrating shadow. And I'd like to start with a piece that Kajal, first of all, welcome. Kajal is one of my students. She's here from India with us. She has incredible wisdom body herself, although she's very young in this lifetime, in this age. Welcome, Kajal. I'm so delighted to hold this space with you.
Hello everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Really good to be here and talk about things that matter.
So I'm going to start because with every journey that we go on, we like to bring inspiration and a higher frequency to tone so that this becomes a space for you to venture also within and to contemplate, and that it's a healing frequency and that we're not talking at you, but we're inviting you into an experience. So let me read from this, and then we will dive into why the feminine wisdom path must include deep shadow transformation and what that really looks like, and also how it's affecting our ability to receive the DNA upgrades and the ascension codes from Gaia, our mother planet, that she so deeply wishes to gift us with. Okay. So let me get to this piece. This is by Laura Knight Jazz, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, from the Wave 6. Thank you for sending this to me, Kajal. The moment of true initiation. It seems that, as the great masters teach us, it is not a moment of great enlightenment. It is not someone who comes to show us reality. It is not a seeing all the world as oneness. It is seeing the self as a liar and feeder on others. It is measuring the self with truth. It is seeing that the predator has been feeding on the self, that the self has been feeding on others, and that propagating the infection onto all those who one claims to love and wish to help. Initiation is not a glorious inpouring of life and love and tears for the beauty and oneness of the world. It is sheer terror. It is a descent into hell. It is the shamanic descent into the underworld to do battle with demons. It is the dismemberment of the body, the flaying of the flesh from the bones, and the subsequent rebuilding of the self on a different foundation, a foundation of spiritual verity. And as if I could convey to you that hell, that sensation, that solitary test in which the soul is weighed by the self, finally and completely, and seen for what it truly has done, you would see how little truth there is because of all the beliefs of the matrix that have been accumulated and promulgated and intended so carefully by our emotions and by the deceptions of the predator within, who convinces us that we are good and pure and there is oneness. Indeed, one sees that there is oneness, but one sees that the aspect of God that is experienced as this level is the black, sucking, feeding maw, the service to self. One sees how little true love is actually manifested at this level of being. One sees that all of our illusions about goodness and truth and beauty are lies. They are masks for more feeding. And that is so horrifying an initiation that few survive. This is paying everything. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So that's a fairly shocking little thing to begin with. That's very troubling and disconcerting amongst monks. But so, Kajal, perhaps this is a good point to tell us about spirituality that you've experienced as a young woman in India. Do you feel that the spirituality there embraces a healing path for the feminine?
I'm going to be very blunt here and say that not at all, actually. Uh, like from what I have seen in my since my childhood, it's more about worshipping something that's outside of yourself. It's about worshipping gods and goddesses. And my soul's wisdom tells me that anything that asks you to worship something outside of you and your higher self, it's taking you further away from your path. So as a child, I did fall into that. As a child, I did fall into the worshipping some gods, and I was on that path for a while until I woke up deeper, a level deeper, and I actually started feeling connected to my soul and to the planet, and I realized that you don't need to worship anything. Actually, you just need to be connected to yourself and to the planet and to source. That it's about connection. It's not about worship. You know.
Well, I just really admire your courage to come forward on a public interview, because I understand that when women speak against the patriarchal religion in your country, it can be a very serious offense. So you're a whistleblower in calling this out. And I would love to hear more. I have great empathy. I feel that India, way back in the day, was a womb of the creatrix, of the organic light plasma, of the divine feminine, and has been so vampirized, abused, tortured, raped, suppressed. And there are so many practices in India and in many parts of the world that are really make the female direct connection to Gaia, Sophia, and the inspiration and love and regeneration and alchemical transformation that is truly the spiritual path on offer from our mother planet to us right now as really an offense. So I don't know if you want to say anything more here. We have a list of questions trying to chart out what this path of what it's going to take to get in alignment with the planet to receive these DNA upgrades. And because they are on offer, but they are upgrades for what they call the junk DNA, or the corrupted part of our DNA. And from what my direct experience working for 40 years in spiritual shadow transformation work is that the corrupted DNA is corrupted due to the lies that we have embodied. I don't know if you want to say anything at that point. So it literally is blocking the upgrade. It's like we're receiving this incredible gift of ascension where we shift with the planet to the new earth, however that rolls out in this next time frame, whether that's 2 years or 200 years. There are multiple stories around how this is going to unfold. It is unfolding. There are massive new energetic upgrades that are going to lift us out of the frequency of harm on multidimensional levels. And this is what this shadow synthesis work is about, is people coming together in community, coming out of separation and exposing the lies, distortion, and imposition and supporting one another to break free so we can embody the feminine essence.
Yeah.
So if you want to jump in there with anything, go for it. If not, I'll just go on to the next
So
thing.
I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
So why are people being called to do shadow synthesis right now at this point in time?
Well, it's really interesting you use the word call, because it is a call. I'm getting emails from people saying, I heard the call a few years ago, but I was too scared. It's a call. I feel it's a call from Gaia because we are in deconstruction. And as the very awake audience that you are on this channel of Alfred's, I know that you know that the old paradigm is breaking apart. It's compressing and it's breaking open. The lies are being exposed on the outer, and our shadows are surfacing on the inner. And from my understanding, Gaia, in her incredible unconditional love and mercy, has offered this planet while she has been under a huge attack and war on her due to the Draco, reptilian, archontic, Anunnaki, satanic, Luciferian, multidimensional, omnidimensional corruption that has happened, that we have been trapped in a lockdown, and that our soul energy has been very cleverly manipulated and used as food to fuel non-sourced beings who are desperate to keep us ignorant, dumb, in the dark, terrified, disempowered, and their food source. And this is, Gaia is done. And a lot of the call is the feeling that we are done with her. That's what I would say. And what does that mean, being done? That means do the inner work, clean up the part of us that has been corrupted, the part of us that perpetrates the system of lies, criminality, evil, and corruption unconsciously, because our shadows hide in our blind spots. And so the first thing is to remove the veil and look with love at all of it within ourselves. This is the work we do in community at Shadow Synthesis. And hopefully many people around the planet are doing similar work, because without it, there are two roads. One is the dark star wormhole that is which is the dark agenda. And now that we are at the end times, they fully intend to lock us down and harvest us and turn us into AI robots and mind-controlled slaves, all of which we already are. But now they're taking it to the next level because they are losing power, because the universe, the omniverse, the multiverse, our planet is done. So if you're a frequency match for the power and the control, the power over the self-serving nature, you will go to that frequency. And from what I'm understanding, that's a wormhole that leads to really going back to the beginning of the journey and starting all over again, dissolving into stardust. That's a pretty harsh thing. You say, oh, a guy is a loving being. How could she do that to me? She's not doing it to you. You're doing it to yourself. There's tons of information out there. So, and that's why we're here today. That's why so many people are stepping forward, risking their lives to speak to you, to get this information out. It's up to each individual to do this inner alchemy, this inner cleansing. When you do, Gaia steps up and gifts you with the transcendent, non-dual, bliss-informed, loving wisdom body that makes you a frequency match for the ascension portals as they're going to unfold. And that's a different timeline. People call it organic Gaia's ascension timeline. I believe there's two timelines, and we're choosing by how we show up, not in our heads, not cut off in pretending we're one thing doing another, but energetically how we're showing up. Did I answer that question?
Yeah,
You
very
have anything
beautifully
you want
said.
to throw in there from your own experience? Kajal has been doing shadow synthesis for 10 months now. And
Yep.
her wisdom body is unfolding exponentially, and she has a lot to share, which totally up to you what level of sharing you wish to engage in here.
I want to say that, you mentioned something about blind spots. And I think that this in shadow synthesis, we are focused towards purification of our egoic structure. And that purification is not possible to do alone. Like from the material that I've read, which also points towards this direction, and from my experience in shadow synthesis as well, that this purification cannot, it's not possible to do it alone by yourself. And you need a guide, a mirror, someone to call you out on your bullshit, which Sienna does very lovingly at times. So and so like you were talking about the blind spots, right? So these entities, they target your blind spots, and but once you're aware of your blind spots, you cannot be put down anymore by these entities, and your frequency starts to raise. So since I've started doing shadow synthesis, I can say that, like at least 60% of my interference has completely reduced, mainly because I've started seeing my own weaknesses and working on my weaknesses through because of shadow synthesis, actually.
Well,
So yeah,
thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, I was
yeah,
just
yeah, that's
yeah. That I want to be clear about what, because I agree it is not time to outsource the authority. Now the teachers that, and I also want to be clear that I had a really deep shadow. My book, Stealing the Moon, which is second edition coming out soon. I guess it's on the website shadowsynthesis.com now. It is autobiographical, although it's creative nonfiction story of me being a dark sister and recovering from being one of the batteries to fuel the patriarchy all the way back to Akhenaten and Nefertiti in Egypt. Whereas the consolidation of the Atan and the Black Sun and the patriarchy was consolidated, and at a point where my feminine energetic, due to weaknesses in my own system at that time, ended up being harvested and used for to fuel the whole dark agenda, including the template was set up at that time for pedophilia. So I'm here to balance the scales on that one, but I was helped by an incredible woman, and her whole thing was self-responsibility. This isn't a new religion, a cult, the nature of shadow is that somebody has to bust the blind spots until we're open enough to see them in ourselves. And we have to always straddle that fence between codependence and authentic, nurturing, loving, compassionate support that takes us out of the field, the frequency of separation, because the artificial construct or the matrix is a frequency. It's a prison out there And most of what is on the media is focusing on the world stage and the projection of the inner war for our souls out there, yet it can only be won initially in here. And when it is, then we become consummate spiritual warriors that can actually stand in the authority of our embodied truth and create change, not by being against anything, but by standing for and holding the space of the nurturant feminine. I feel that the feminine is the healer now, and that's in men and women. The men I work with are healing their feminine. But what's a feminine? Compassion, connection, being able to feel with a sensitive ability to connect for what's occurring in someone other than our own egoic structure. And I also want to say that a lot of men's sensitivity was actually robbed by their mothers. And we're going to talk about that in detail. We're going to do a whole series on women becoming women, because we have become the agents for the patriarchy in many regards. And this is a shadow that is very deep, and we don't want to look at it. This is the shadow, some of the shadows we're looking at, shadow synthesis. So it's self-help. It's all self-help process tools. Everyone's on their own journey. The guide is just check it out in your own reality. This is what I see. At the beginning, it's way more important to have my bullshit detector dialed way up. And more, when you're activated, you don't need anyone. And if you ask me, well, what did Aisha love, my mentor? If you said in one sentence, what was her strongest wisdom to you? I would say it's get out of the way. Hold the space like a good mama bear and get out of the way. So I just wanted to be clear about we're all addicted to gods, goddesses, authorities, parents, teachers. We all want someone to know. And we need to stop being children. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Like in the last session itself, like I'm glad that I could call out myself and call myself out on my own lies. So it's a sign that I'm growing up, you know.
Yes. If in any specifics you want to offer, and there's no pressure, because I understand that this is danger literally to your life to speak specifics in the culture that you're in. But any specifics you can share would be helpful for our audience. Otherwise, let's just go to the next question then, okay? Did I answer the first question fully?
Yes, Sienna, very beautifully. Thank you.
It's going to be very interesting when we get to answering the title of this show, which is Rewriting the Shadow History of Humanity. And because this work is now evolving, an aspect of that, Gaia showed up this last week, helping in an incredible way as we do our own shadow clearing to actually clear it out of the whole collective. And I want to say that I'm so completely amazed by the new capacities coming on that are available to everybody. You don't have to be a super advanced Palladian to be able to be getting source informed and Gaia informed, incredible, I don't know the other word, magic. Magic's been so corrupted on this planet by the black magicians and the patriarchy, but I don't know another word. There's huge magic being gifted to us by Gaia and the sun, because it's starting in, I was just listening to Laura Eisenhower. She said, the birds are agreeing with us here from Ecuador. She was saying how in 2010, when the sun morphed, we now have elements to co-create, and this is all a co-creation with our mother planet. You know, it's not earth, air, water, and fire, it's also the ether. And this meets the magical, imaginal, transformational realms where we can create the templates. You know, the templates on the invisible realms are what create the denser structures. So we can shift reality. not for ourselves using these tools and techniques. She's right there with us in these meditations and processes now, and she's releasing it for the whole collective. And one of the things that she told me, sorry, hang on, that Facebook just always wants to get in your face, doesn't it? I'm closing that down. I don't want the little bleakles while we're talking. It's very rude. Excuse me, I should have done that before. Okay, so it's interesting when the most important things are discussed, how interference loves to run, don't they? Yeah, so because we go into shadow dives where we go back and we pull out the trauma that has been created, and the beliefs and the behaviors that we have inside of our own personal unconscious. And they keep looping. So we know this is the trauma-based mind control that through our ancestors, through past lives, through our inner baby, early childhood trauma, and the subpersonalities and the fractures that have broken off due to severe trauma, that all these pieces are reverberating in terror and horror and running from the pain, and the ego is very busy defending us from ourselves, because that's what's in our own inner being, and we need to transit through there to get to this huge expansion of love that's on offer. Well, she was saying that actually one of the gifts, and there are many gifts, there are many tools that are going to be on offer as you engage in your healing work with yourself and other people, as you're co-creating with the planet and source. You're becoming the shaman, you're becoming the guru, you're becoming superpowers that are part of our birthright. Before we were genetically modified, our template, our human genome had superpowers. We had multidimensional powers. This was taken down to turn us into slaves and cutting us off from source. And now this is all the upgrades in the DNA are returning us to our birthright. And but it's also, so we're healing, as we heal the personal unconscious, Gaia is coming in and healing the collective with us. So she's going in and pulling the hooch, the looch, the negative energy, the trauma, the tear out of key points in history where many of us are recalling our originating lifetimes, where we turn to the dark side, like in my book, Stealing the Moon, where Nefertiti turned to the dark side because she cracked under huge trauma. And then the trauma reverberates, and so we're just cowering and we don't ever want to face it. So she's pulling huge pieces of the collective trauma. She's rewriting the collective trauma of huge periods of history that are still terrorizing humanity, right down to the cellular memory, the genetic memory in their DNA, so that it's easier to have the courage to do the inner work and receive these upgrades. Does that make any sense, Kajal?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to add to the rewriting part about what you said.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
from what I have learned and gathered by now is that rewriting just means that going back into your memories and feeling what you have suppressed in those times, and feeling what happened to redeem yourself in a way, and rewriting it in your heart and mind. So this is what I wanted to share about the rewriting part, basically. Like, what is rewriting actually? And you know,
Well, it's interesting because what happened is that our organic design was targeted, and the capabilities, our hearts were targeted to lose our connection to one another. Why would we have a humanity that is under such insanity and just goes along more of the same, like rats in a maze, and regardless of all the inhumanity and all the injustice, just gets up and goes to work every day and is just like, I can't do anything. I'll just, keep my mouth shut. How could that be? Because we know that there are way more of us than there are power elites and off-world controllers. we could turn this around in a second and we won't do it because we are so traumatized. And so what needs to come on board are our capacities to embody our heart intelligence, because the mind has been taken over by the dark side and the ego. So when you're in your mind because you're terrified to be in your body because it's going to start showing you the places that need healing, and they're scary places, so you're in your mind hiding from yourself, and the mind is programmed. You know, there are those archons whispering all day to polarize you against men if you're a woman, to polarize you against yourself, to keep everybody separate and hiding. In lockdown, in the prison of separation, we're so much easier to control. The feminine is all about gathering and having fun doing it, turning on, opening up the bliss channel, loving on each other, embracing everything, growing up to face that we have a long history of evil to transmute, and it's okay. And we have the most powerful spiritual forces in the Omniverse supporting us every step of the way, and it's okay. And we do this supporting each other because why? We're in groups, and suddenly, you know, I'm the biggest and baddest and the most copped out and sold out and negative. And now you're in a room and other people are doing the exact same thing. And it's like, oh, I'm not the worst person in the world. Oh, they're as screwed up as me. Oh, I just told them the most horrible thing I've been hiding all my life, and they're still sitting in the room with me. Oh, so we start getting over it. And then, because trauma shuts down our capacities, it shuts down our knowing, our intuition, our ability to speak our truth, our willing to take action for justice. So this is what needs, the rewriting is exposing what we've become. And there's parts of us that are serving the dark side because we cut deals with the dark side. Like, you know, in Dante's Inferno, we've all made a deal with the devil, all of us, and our ancestors and our parents. And they had to. A lot of them would have been dead if they didn't. But those contracts need to be seen and broken. We don't need to perpetrate that. We set all the souls, all the entities, everybody gets to go home, make their choices, game over. We're done giving consent. But it's inside, because when we're plugged in to these contracts, what's coming into our mind are the orders from the dark side, the thoughts that are telling us how to behave to keep us in separation. Does that make?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. I do not say this, but I agree with that 100%.
Okay. So let's talk about humanity, the Dracos, the false light, Yahweh, distortion, the Bible, and the control grid lockdown. And here I am with a beautiful goddess from India. So what do you see going on? So let's talk about this God, this Yahweh, the God of the Bible. I mean, this is the God of the Quran. This is the God of the Hindus. This is the one God. How do you see this false light God? And how do you see the damage that worshiping him unfolding within yourself and where you live? Kind of a big question, but take whatever part of it you want.
It's a big question, definitely. What I see in India is about the worship part is that instead of becoming more spiritually growing spiritually and being more connected to each other, people are losing their energy, you know. And when I saw that in India, it sort of like worried me a little bit. This is not how God's love is supposed to be, you know. Like if someone really loves you, you feel amazing, you feel loved, and you feel connected. So if God really does love people, then why are people, you know, thinking that they have done some sins, or like they are bad or something like that? And I mean, I feel like people, even like when false light comes in, it's like people lose connection with each other as well, because they go into their own programming and they turn towards God. But actually, we all are source personified, you know, we are here for each other as source as well. So I feel like that aspect also somewhere loses its existence in false light.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
And
do
what,
have a question for you.
okay, okay.
You were saying something?
No, it's all right.
So how did humanity fall into these negative beliefs and all the lies that humanity has gotten trapped into?
Yeah, there's lots of theories about that. Um, you know, one of the interesting points of that is the cosmic abandonment issue. And Mark Passio talks about that a lot. And he does a great job on that, because when um, we do a lot of the regression work, and of course, we always get to the early childhood trauma and the sense of being abandoned, usually emotionally, sometimes in many other ways, by people that were already shut down and compromised and couldn't hold space for us and make a real energetic heart connection to let us know we were not in separation and we were seen and we
Mhm.
were loved. Most of humanity, if they face the truth of that, did not get that and struggle for their whole lives to try to get it by being good boys and girls and following the party line, because the pain of it is so great. But when you go omnidimensional with it, then you take it to the originating lifetime where you came here. And we went through that. We did a shadow dive on that. It's one of the meditations in shadow synthesis too, to bring you back to your point of your first incarnation on the planet. Now, a lot of people at that time felt like, WTF, you know, where am I? You know, you're coming out of often very high vibrational dimensions, or being with source, or being on other star systems where duality has been transcended a long time ago. And now we're in this thick, dense realm, and we have no operating manual, and or we don't know what it is. And so many of us right there, I know I did, I became a rebel. You know, I joined, I was definitely set up for the renegade recruit for the Luciferian agenda, because I also wanted to war against whatever being put me here in that state. And that's just the originating lifetime. Then we have multiple lifetimes, whereas this dark imposition, when our DNA got transmuted, there was the war in heaven, and the explosion of Tiamat, the pole shift, and the genetic modification of the human genome, all simultaneous. Well, that trauma was too much, and we shattered our psychological self. We shattered into unconscious, subconscious, and conscious. We got shut down from our multidimensional capacity. And so between our own revulsion for the true creator, and there is a true creator, and there is a true source who loves us unconditionally and is willing to co-create this change with us. But at the end of the day, we've severed from it. We have severed from it through the imposition. Everything that has been done to us to put us in shadow, ultimately we did to ourselves. Now, what do I mean by that? You can be in a torture chamber, you know, getting your nails bitten off, you know, being raped, being beaten, being bloody. But this cannot do anything until that moment when we relent. And when we relent, we cut a deal with the dark side. We give them our soul for fuel in exchange for the pain to go away. And a part of them now lives in us, and this is part of the mind control, giving us orders in our heads. Now, we could have set this up a zillion lifetimes ago and have no idea why we're in this state. So And it feels to us like this is our voice in our head telling us to do these things. And we can't feel our deeper connection because we cut it off a long, long time ago, and our ancestors cut theirs off. The good news is what you have done, you can undo. And this is the time to undo that. And the rewrite is not just a full-on confessional of when we did that, but it's allowing life to open up this upgrade, this DNA upgrade, so that our true potential gets a reboot. It's this organic light that now fills the parts of us that were corrupted by lies. And it's a complete death of ego, and it's a complete breakdown of all the structures that have been complicit. It can be really scary and it can be devastating. And this is going on globally. People are losing their houses, their husbands, their health, because we are in the Kali Yuga at the end, the very end. She's done, and she's going to let it rip. You know, whatever is not in alignment with life is going to be up, and it feels like death, and it's a lot of pain. And then we have a choice to keep reaching for our heart's intelligence in co-creation with the organic timeline, with Gaia, with Source, with our own greater selves. And we will come through if we keep the dedication. Now, why would anyone work that hard? That sounds like an awful lot of work. Well, we've already cut deals with the dark side. If we don't break those contracts, we're on the Death Star timeline. We'll be taken out. This will be the last one. Or we'll just be, you know, rotating in endless cycles on other prison planets. But if we want it complete, if we want to be sovereign, if we want to have choice, then we need to do this rewriting. Yeah. We need to get to that place. And to do that, we have to have incredible radical self-honesty and self-responsibility. This is what the saints did. You know, we renounce everything but the truth. We renounce everything because we have ingested a horrible, toxic banquet of lies and criminality that is now our operating system. We can run from that truth and blame each other and kick and scream and ask the next, you know, presidential candidate to fix it all for us. And that will never do anything to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to also add something to what you said. Like you mentioned something about why would someone do so much hard work? But if we, like, I've been letting go of a lot of my addictions to food, to other kinds of addictions, to Netflix or whatever it is. And once you get rid of that, you feel that burning for truth and, you know, what's really going on. And once you really start feeling that, you will just put in that much hard work, you know, because you feel the truth of things and you feel the emergency of what's happening in the world. And so, like, to, you know, like, you will put in that hard work, and I mean, you can tell, like, your soul is burning, you know. And so
the burning, I mean, is
nothing,
so important. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's really nothing better to do. Like, if you're gonna watch Netflix or, you know, numb yourself out with food and drugs, which I've done for a long time. So that got me nowhere, except for it helped me survive a little bit maybe. But at a certain point, you have to let go of your survival habits and really come alive to why you're here, and, you know, let your soul come through and speak what it's here to do and just serve its purpose, you know.
It's a beautiful feeling, isn't it? And it's interesting. It's interesting because we're in this engineered by design artificial construct of duality, where there's happiness and unhappiness, good and bad. You feel up or you're down. Yes. However, that's not when we start to move into 5D and beyond, into the transcendent new earth frequency of ascension with Gaia Sophia. I mean, I'm just going through this now. I just had surgery less than 2 weeks ago. And I'm actually in a fair amount of pain right at this minute. But because of this work, the part of me that's outside the construct, and more of us gets outside as we do the work, I'm not in pain. I'm in joy. I'm in peace. I'm in union with the sacred. So this happens. This is what this work is exiting the matrix, embracing our wholeness. You don't leave anything behind. You embrace and love all of it. You take radical, it's all you, it's all here. And through absolute unconditional acceptance of what is, we transcend it. And then we are no longer impacted by, I think that really the people that are, and I know a few of them that are pretty much out of the vibrational range of this dualistic artificial construct, they're not even being targeted by Wi-Fi, where others are itching and moaning and getting cancer, and because they're holding this radiant light. This is our source organic light. And this, as it's allowed permission to rebirth through every cell, its protection, its wholeness, its health, and its immunity. And once you're on that path, no matter how much pain, you don't care, because the other is death. You know, when you've been in the death prison camp and your soul ignites and charts a path, even though it's through facing truth that's difficult, you so want to show up for it. It's the inner savior. It's not an out. It's the salvation. It's what everyone's going to church for, but they don't get it in church. There's truth in church. Sometimes people do get their divine connection in church, but they would be getting it if they were sitting under a tree just as well. Okay.
And also what you said about like there's joy, there's sadness, and there's happiness. So there's a woman called Julie Carter who said that happiness is for children, you know, because when you get on this work, it's a focus where you do the work, you feel the pain, and then you feel real joy, you know. Otherwise you're just juggling between pleasure and pain, and it's there's no depth to that, you know. So she said a very beautiful thing. She said happiness is for children, and we really got to grow up and see what's happening in the world, and mainly just do the internal work, you know. That's the most important thing.
So what in my country, which I haven't spent much time in the last few decades, what is it? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, where they set up the false light prison camp, everybody's running around in this narcissistic selfie fantasy that the goal of life is for them singularly to be happy. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Good luck.
The ever-evasive happiness. Whereas infinite and eternal bliss is yours every second of your life, no matter what's going on. And you know, we are also trauma-based mind controlled in all of this religious indoctrination to feel like worthless sinners that must be punished and must sacrifice our lives in order to connect with the divine. And this has been the spiritual meme of the patriarchy. What a con job. It is not the case at all. And it is, but it's a real learning curve. And this is why it's so great to have buddies, to have an inner work community, to even try baby steps. Wow, I can be in bliss knowing there's horrible things going on in the world. But I can be in bliss, and I can radiate and communicate that bliss, and everyone who does it machetes through that jungle, and the people coming next, it's going to be easier for them. And we need to know that we deserve the bliss, no matter how much of a sinner we've been. If we are asked, you know, fully feel the remorse of what we've done, face it, ask forgiveness, forgive ourselves, the grace of Source takes from us this huge burden. And we're free to be in the bliss state. Gaia wants us to co-create in a bliss state. The Garden of Eden was her gift to us. It was a place of freedom and a non-dual bliss. You know, Dan Winters talks about bliss as the required conditions for birthing new universes, that the plasma that generates the birth of the new stars and the new galaxies and the new planets, how that gets triggered is through bliss. And that's why the human genome is so highly targeted. You have to have feelings to generate bliss. You can't do that being a reptile that is so violated source. And all reptiles haven't, I'm saying the ones that have violated source so many times that you have nothing left inside of you and you have to feed on other people. There, you know, the guardianship is with the creatrix, which the starfire, the goddess creatrix energy, it is the soul spark. It is the generator of the originating light plasma that births life. This is the feminine. Now, I believe that men also can, once they face it all, get their DNA upgrades and hold this space, because we don't need women at the helm. We need women to help heal, to help catalyze the healing of men and women together. Because why is that? And we should talk about that, because the man and women thing is so highly targeted, because it's why it's that bliss, it's that union that generates the new. And so if you take that down and people are desperate, then they give their souls over to Satan, they as a last ditch to feel some kind of intense sensations. And most people are addicted to this Jezebel spirit, the intense sensations of evil, because that's all they can feel. And that's the very sad thing when you have pedophiles and criminals templating the operating system of humanity. You have a very sick humanity. And sadly, we do. And the younger ones are very sad right now because they seem to be at the helm of becoming robots. So traumatized, it's actually gotten into the DNA that the operating system is mind, is AI, is no intimacy, is everyone in their own world. And what they've learned to do is just be okay with it. And young people, it's very, very sad. Intimacy is very shunned upon, and it is the spiritual pathway of the feminine. It is the only pathway that's going to get us out of this mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, thank you. So let's go on to our next question, if I haven't answered them. I make lists of questions and then we get into flow, and let's see where we are. So what I'd like to be clear about before we finish here is this rewriting thing. I would like to talk a little bit about the feminine soul and the women that are hearing the call. And why are women hearing the call so much? I mean, most of my groups are women because they're hearing the call. And I wish that wasn't true. I'm totally open to men joining the group. Often they do, and then they drop out. But I hope that changes. I so hope that changes. But it's interesting. The last two groups of shadow synthesis, I'm calling your group the starfire priestesses, sort of revival gathering, because that group, and it's interesting how this is being engineered at a deep soul level. So the first group are very dynamic creatrixes that have been severely traumatized and have all made deals with the dark side. And each one of them, I think almost without exception, have been key players in key points in history where the agenda got locked down very darkly, like in Egypt with me, with Akhenaten and Nefertiti. There are other times where people showed up as and set things in motion that had huge traumatic implications and still do. So the progression there is that, well, first we build trust and we create this field of love and support. We get to know each other. We understand the material. It takes several months before we do any of this really in-depth shadow diving. You cannot do this in a container without love. But once that's been established and we flesh out the people that are the looky-loos from the people that are really going to do this work, they do a progression of shadow dives and excavating at a deep subconscious level. All of this comes up with the techniques that Aisha Love created, the quantum feeling states of animation. Incredible work. And so everybody gets to excavate this. It's not me telling you what's going on. It's you telling me what's going on. So we're going back, through childhood, then through other lifetimes, and we're seeing the places where we got co-opted. We're removing the entities, the demons, the interference, and we're also facing our own subpersonalities that got modeled along the lines of power, domination, and control rather than love, generosity, compassion, and transcendence. And we finally hit this core level where we realize that we really have been, and not completely, but pretty deeply, serving the dark side, and then we break all of those contracts, and we break and we go through that process of the remorse and the forgiveness and the return to source and to healing. And then what's happening is that these creatrixes are getting reactivated. So this is an initiation in a way through feminine wisdom, where our higher capacities come back online. Because why? Now we're responsible stewards. We're not going to be given huge spiritual powers to misuse, even though there are a lot of false light charlatans that have, and products that have remarkable healing powers to seduce us to the dark side. So that's where we have to be discerning. It's getting so convoluted out there with so much false light that are using all the words of the authentic people. And that's a really good thing to talk about. How do you discern who's driving you and who's telling you the truth? Because the overlays of the places where we've sold out to the dark side blind us. And as a matter of fact, when someone is embodying the vulnerable, emotional, and female and heart essence, it's scary to the part of us that's sold out because it mirrors our cop out, and we don't like it. It either makes us face it or we need to get the heck away from that person. So discernment is probably one of the biggest challenges we have right now. I think you might have some interesting insight in discernment as well, because certainly when you began, your discernment meter wasn't nearly as attuned as it is now. I mean, I've seen you, fall into BS and then come back and go, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I just did my dive for today or my feeling state, and I was doing this, and this, and it's like the blinders just come off of you. I've seen you do that many times. I don't know if you could share any of that on any level, but that might be helpful to give a few specifics for people.
Okay. I actually wanted to share something, an experience I had in shadow synthesis for everyone who's watching also. That in one of the shadow dives, which was during the group session that we did, and it was about healing one of your sub-personalities. So I had this one sub-personality who was one angry little child who had contracted to the dark side as well. And I just want to share what happened to me in the meditation. And when I went into the meditation, Gaia came inside the meditation and she guided me throughout the meditation. And so this angry part of me was like raging, like, the transformative fire had been misused by my ego and the dark side. And she was raging inside, and she was in a lot of pain, and she was alone. And I stayed with that subpersonality for a few months, and then after those few months, in the session, Gaia came in, and I went deep inside. And I mean, the dynamics are different how each person will do it, but that part of me just broke down into pure water, and I felt the breakthrough and the shift in my life after that. So this is one of the things that happened in shadow synthesis, and which I wanted to share with
Thank
everyone
you.
also.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I get a lot of people who've done various kinds of healing modalities, very, cutting edge. There's so many out there now. I get people who've done everything in the kitchen sink, but the core of themselves is still operating in unconscious behaviors. And yet they want to be healers. They want to send light and love to people. And then the other thing, now that we've opened up Pandora's multidimensional box, and we know about the Dracos, we know about the Archons, we know about Enlil and Enki, we know about the Cabal, we know about the deep state, we know about demons, we know about how they're affecting us to some degrees inside of ourselves. And it's all spiritual entertainment. We're not really taking care of business. We're not going back to our human basis, which is our connection to source, is our humanity, is our loving hearts activated. And, we can go to a healer. She can remove implants. It can move. And I know I'll probably get, nasty letters from implant removal. All these things have their place. They're great. There's a lot of great work. These people can help you. We do our own implant removal because they're tied to the subpersonalities and the unconscious parts of us. The parts of us that are really holding in the darkness are dissociated, and they will fight not to be made conscious until we find them and love them and help them break their addiction to the darkness. That's where we're trapped. It isn't our conscious minds. So, and we're not going to heal this by just removing interference. Let me say that again. This isn't going to go bye-bye just by doing all of this really woo-woo stuff. We got to embody ourselves. See, the last thing we think is valuable is us. The last thing we think is worth putting time and energy and financial resources into is just me. But if I can be taken over by demons and there's millions of implants and nanobots running around my body, which all of that's true and that needs to be addressed, then it's important and dynamic, and we are being played, people. We are being played now they've learned, the dark side has learned. No, don't shut all these woo-woo channels down. Let them see how scary we are, how big and bad we are. Let them talk about the next weather manipulation, the next meltdown, the next collapse. Let them talk about it forever. Just let them scare the heck out of themselves all day long. We don't have a problem. Why do you think those channels aren't going away? Because it's a distraction. All of these scenarios are distractions from us really embodying ourselves. We have the power, and we are being played. Do you have anything you want to say about that?
I want to say that, I mean, in shadow synthesis, it's like, first thing is no bullshit. Second thing is you understand what the real deal is. You learn to love the parts of yourself that you haven't loved and you didn't know. So there's no judgment because you didn't know. But then you know that, okay, this is what you need to love within yourself. And the third thing is that there is no bullshit. You get straight to, you get it. Sienna is not going to tell you this is what's wrong in you, and you get it. You see, okay, this is the root of my issue, or and then you work on it with yourself by loving the parts of ourselves that haven't been loved for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know if we haven't completing what we needed to do. Do you have anything more? Let me just go over where what we wanted to cover things pretty much. There was, I'm going to be now creating this new educational collaboration with Alfred, where Alfred is bringing on some fabulous minds. Very important that we do understand the omniverse, that we understand all the imposition, that we understand who's really in charge of our governments, that we understand the criminality behind all the lie. We must look at it all, and it's so important. And then, so that's the masculine is looking at it with our minds. And then the feminine, let's process, let's pull it from ourselves. Because we can't change out there by being against anything. And we can only be for the change if we are the change. And that takes embodying the energetic of a loving heart. And it does then take becoming a sacred activist. And I do want to speak to that a bit. It's not just do the inner work. And it's not just do the outer work. They need each other. And when we come together to create change in the outer, the voice of God technology, you know, these energy weapons get directed. It's happened in every group I've seen. And a lot of the people are coming. We all have deep wounding. And suddenly we are fighting each other. And we break up. This has been their most effective tool. Most of the new communities cannot sustain without an authority figure. And most of the real the great projects get infiltrated by horrible criminal pedophiles like Gaia TV, everything that Patty's having to wrestle with. And, you know, it just goes on and on. So this is partly why I totally decided to focus on this shadow work, because I realized we're not going to be able to do this until we can hold 0 point, non-reactivity, all parts present, embracing our wholeness, stepping out of the construct, and being able to do that with 51% or more of ourselves is the only way that any group, organization, project is going to have sustainability. Now, there's an enormous cleanup job on the outer. So what I'm being guided to do is create grassroots, a global inner work, self-help community through this 0 point consortium and the shadow work and such to mobilize that, where small groups, you can't do this in gigantic groups because you lose your individuality and nobody gets heard and seen and felt. But you can do it in small groups that then can gather and can organize. You can meet in your local area, do the inner work, and then have time to, okay, what can I do? You know, 5G is rolling out in my community and I've been too terrified to speak up. I'm afraid they'll kill me. Well, they're already killing you. Hello, you know, open your mouth. That is your homework. You did great shadow work. Now go to your town meeting and bring research and firm data and all that left brain, you know, beat the drums, stand in front of Walmart. Let people know they're going to be genocided if they don't snap out of it, you know, and don't be aggressive or angry or screaming. Be loving. Hold a space that's inviting and open where what are you doing? Who are you? To wholeness. We embrace everything. And yet we're discerning and we take action. So this is going to be a huge part of 0 Point Consortium in the future. I'm hoping to get people to come in and co-create this with us, create platforms where we start organizing more on a sacred activist level about especially 5G and the EMFs and the AI takeover. And it's amazing the resistance and the fear and the impotence and the blindness, because the part of us that's contracted to the dark side just goes blind. Like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. We're getting the wrong messages. And Gaia will permission it to happen if, they do kill everyone but 500 million people because humanity didn't do anything to stop it, then that's what's going to happen. I don't see how it's going to stop. I don't see how it's going to stop until people really start facing how sold out to the dark side they are. And I mean brilliant people. I mean educated people. I mean woo-woo people. I mean people that could hold incredible education about David Icke, Mark Passio, seen millions of videos, watch every book. I mean you. If you haven't investigated the inner, I can say pretty much for the few people on this planet, part of you is not going to show up in right timing to be an effective change agent. And it's going to be on you if you're not. Because now is the time of choice. Humanity is getting to decide individually, one person at a time, what its intended outcome will be.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
So we're going to be on, I believe, every third week. There's a new round of shadow synthesis starting in January 6th, a week from yesterday. There's still some spots open for that. I offer a free chat because this is really scary material and people need to understand what's really involved in that course, which I'm not going to go into that on a talk like this. So if you're hearing the call, but you feel confused or frightened, and you want to chat, the chat isn't to do the hard sell. Really, the chat is to see, is this right for you? I don't even want you in the group if it's not right for you. So we just talk. So that's shadowsynthesis.com. Very soon, we are going to be working with Alfred to get his new Omniversity website up and the 0 Point Consortium up and initiate a new show, Women Becoming Women. So rather than women against anything, or women standing up in a polarized way against anything or calling out anything, all important movements, this movement will be women doing the work to hold everything and be the glue and develop their wisdom bodies so that they can be trusted to hold a continuity of love and care, to be the transformational catalysts of what needs to happen. So that's, I think I would leave it there. Do you have any closing remarks, Kajal?
I just want to say that it really does come down to each individual, and the fact that everyone has to take responsibility first within and then extend it outwards. And it's really doable if all of us really do take personal responsibility. And I mean, it's hard, but if we have each other, then we can really do it. It's not that hard if we have each other.
It's been really fun and inspiring and beautiful. It's been like waking up to, oh, I'm not alone with this. And what a relief that is. What an incredible relief that is, because usually the people who are waking up around the world are alone. They're under poverty or illness or some kind of oppression, and even their closest people, this is too far out for them. And it beats them down, it shuts them down, and it hurts them. And that's why I created Rise Multiversity, and the course and everything is a place to gather, a place to commune, where you can let your hair down and say anything. And what is acceptable behavior is for us to create that kind of non-judgmental space so that we can finally heal in community. Yeah. Okay. Much love to you, everybody. Enjoy your day. See the beauty. Hug a tree, and talk to Gaia. She's willing to co-create your future with you if you come from integrity, from love, and from self-honesty. Okay. Take care.